to the broadcast. Remember, it's a back to school edition as we take you through what is happening across the country as we have our students go back to school after a long 9-month break courtesy of COVID-19. And with me in studio is still with me in studio is Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Member of Parliament, Darago constituency. Good to have you, Mheshimiwa, once again for this segment. And he now, of course, is joined by Mohammed Mahat, who's the education expert from Horn of Africa. Good to have you, sir. And we also have Jasper Ondimo, who's an education expert too. Thank you so much. And we'll be having on Skype and CEC for Matters Education also in Kisumu County, that is John Awiti. But first of all cross over to the coast. We have our very own reporter Fatma to give us updates on what is happening down there. Just paint a picture of what the situation is like down there, Fatma. Fatma, if you can hear me, kindly paint a picture of what the situation is like down there.
Yes, Linda Alela can get you loud and clear. As you can see, we are at Kisauni Baptist Primary School in Kisauni constituency, Mombasa County. Actually, it's a public school. We arrived here at least some few minutes ago, but unfortunately, there are no teachers around. And the children have been seen coming in, ready for their day one in school to resume their learning after the long stay at home. But from the look of things is that some pupils could come in wearing masks, some don't have their masks, and we don't know how the day is going to be like for them for their day one in school. Actually, the CS of Education, George Magoha, has said that no pupil should be allowed in class without a mask. And we are here to see how the day one will actually go or be like for the pupils who don't have masks. And we want to see what the teachers are putting in place or the preparations that the teacher will be taking to make sure they at least reduce congestions among students or among pupils, as it is known that most of the schools have less number of classrooms. And we'll be moving around Mombasa County today moving around to some schools. Actually, after this, we'll be heading to Concordia Primary School, which we know is the most populated school in the county. But we are really eager to know how the children will be handled to make sure we avoid the congestion in classes. As you can see, children are moving in, are seen coming into school for their day one. Unfortunately, some don't have their masks on. The question is, how will the day be for them for their day one in school, actually? And we tried moving around the school to see the preparations that are put in place. So far, we had some conversation with only a staff member who was doing some cleaning. We could not get enough information about how the school is going to handle the day for the day one of resumption of classes today. Back to you, Linda.
Well, Fatma, thank you so much. I know I'll be coming to you later on to get more updates in regards to this. But on the very same note, I think it's only fair that I engage the panelists in regards to what we've just seen there and what it speaks of, a country that is set to go out there. And of course, in regards to what it is that the government had given as an assurance that all system go. Jasper, you are a teacher, or you've been a teacher, you will tell us that. And evidently, we'd probably say it's a bit too early. It's 7:15 now. Maybe teachers in most cases will start getting into class or into this, vicinity at around 8 there. But is this what you would have expected for day one? Look at how those students are getting into school. And evidently, as Fatma tells us, a majority of them do not have their masks. There are no, checkups at the gate and all that. Is this really what we expected?
First, thank you, Linda, for having me on the show. In regards to the teachers reporting to school, I might not have full information. Perhaps the teachers are inside and they've not come out.
Fatma is, maybe. Fatma has gone inside.
Yes, she says. But ordinarily, teachers are supposed to be in school ahead of the students so that they welcome them in. it is a good moment that kids are going back to school.
Yeah.
Most of them have been yearning to go back to school, and others who are at home have really undergone through several challenges. We had some students who are having their lunch in school. During this COVID period, they were not having any meal at home, so most of them are suffering. So it was the right thing for us to open schools. It has been long overdue. Kenya was among the few countries in Africa that had not opened schools, so it is really encouraging to see that we are going full gear as far as school opening is concerned. Yes, we've seen some students are not wearing masks, but I think it's also the responsibility of the parents to ensure that these learners have masks.
Yeah.
As much as you could be saying that there are places in this country affording a mask could be at all order, but I think it is 10 shillings, and any parent can really strive to ensure that the learner has a mask, because you're talking about the health, the life of the learner. And we had the education CS saying that if you don't have a mask, you're not going to be allowed in school. So considering that social distancing is not going to be achieved, having a mask must be paramount.
All right. Well, the government has spent so much time on planning, has put so much resources in regards to this, just to see that our students are back to school. And yes, we've gotten that assurance constantly. And yesterday, you know, these waziris also came to confirm that 101% that everything is set. Is that a picture of what you would say everything is indeed set?
Looking at the picture, it shows there is some level of uncertainty all across. And this uncertainty is manifested in the learners, in the parents, in the school management. Today we expect over 15 million children to report to schools. And the government had a responsibility to put in place a meticulous plan. And for a crisis like this, in order to ensure safe return to school, there ought to have been a very good planning. And when I talk about planning, I want us to look at three aspects. The first one is education financing. It's quite important, because the economy has been affected. The government ought to have done an assessment of the situation of the schools. Remember, we are dealing with an extraordinary situation. You know, providing masks at school level, or parents for them to provide masks to make schools safe, it costs money. And, you know, transfers in terms of grants to schools will have facilitated that. So it appears that schools have not been facilitated in a way they're able to receive learners after 9 months of break.
Well, what amount of assessment would have been needed to guarantee that proper facilitation is one thing that we'll probably ask Mheshimiwa later on. First, let's loop in John Owiti, who's on standby from Kisumu and joins us via Skype. And we'd love to know what the situation is like down there, Mheshimiwa, and also in regards to preparations.
Oh, thank you very much for that, for this invite. I would like to say that today is a very exciting day for the youth of this country. It is like their Christmas, because children have been at home for the last 1 year. So what will happen is that nearly a good percentage is going to turn up in their schools. And this is where the challenge is, because in terms of space, there is a challenge, because it's not very possible, even with the funds that the government talked about, to provide enough infrastructure to take care of this. So with us in Kisumu County, we have tried to make some few arrangements that would make sure that at least some measure is met. For example, under our situation in the ECD, we have tried to make arrangement with UNICEF and some well-wishers to provide tents for areas where we are going to find there is no enough space for the children to be comfortable. At the same time, the issue of mask, we have been privileged that some well-wishers, we made a prior arrangement with some well-wishers to provide us with masks for our kids at the ECD. But remember, these are children.
Yeah.
Even if you provide a mask, after about 2-3 hours, they will have shared with, they share with each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get dirty and they put them on. So it's a challenge to the teacher this time around to ensure that there is close supervision so that this mask, even if they are provided, then the children are safe. It's not just made available for fun for that. Otherwise, there is a challenge that we are expecting to supervise, to investigate today. In fact, as we are talking, our teams have been sent to go out to see and have a practical experience of how the schools are starting. And from there, we'll be in a picture to give the position of what is there. But as it is, it is a challenge because it is not enough to provide all these facilities for all the children that are going to go to school.
Before I loop in Mheshimiwa, also on the aspect of getting, you're in the early childhood sector and looking at these young turks and also looking at students with special needs. There's going to be needed, there will be a need of having more care or special care in regards to this. How much more has been done towards addressing the same?
In fact, the challenge is more on these kids at ECD.
Yes.
Because the ones that in standard 8, standard 7, standard 8, or in secondary schools are mature enough to understand what the challenge of COVID. But the ones at ECD, some of them still are not in a position to know what is this thing. In fact, to them, to make mask part of the uniform is really a challenge to them because they don't understand. So what we have done for the last 2 weeks, we have tried to train some of our ECD teachers using the health officials to make them understand and explain to the children why they are using these facilities that were not part of their use during last times they were in school. And the problem is that we may not have enough of this mask to keep on changing and replacing the ones that are dirty, the ones that are changed. But we hope that as we progress, we are going to see the necessary adjustment that can be done.
All right. Mohammed speaks of, a proper assessment that could have been carried by the government to ensure that we get to ourselves to that safe space, because as it is, we are having our students going out to school, but we also acknowledge that indeed there is a challenge in doing this. How much more of assessment would have been needed, or how much more of course, engagement and, resource putting could have been needed to see us getting to that point where we can say, we are confident that 101% our students are safe? Mheshimiwa.
I think to echo the statement by my colleagues is that one is to appreciate that without doubt today is a great day for our young people in this country. Having kept them out of school for a whole year, and it is not that they were kept out, it's because of that pandemic that we still have. But having them out of school for a whole year, and school is a source of joy, is what they look forward to every day, after every weekend. It gets to a point where when you interact with them, it's like, what are they expecting tomorrow? And that becomes very, very dangerous. It was getting to very dangerous levels. I was one of the people who thought that perhaps we should even have opened a little earlier than January. I thought we should even have opened schools back in October. But again, we must be respectful for those who are who have the responsibility. They are in positions, they have the statistics, they are doing the research, and we go by the advice that they have given us. The ministry, a team from the ministry visited my constituency, and they did assessment of the kind of space that we need. And I remember in one of the schools I was required to put up 14 new classrooms.
Yes.
For us to be able to be within the guidelines that were being put in place.
Yeah.
And when you, after having gone around the whole constituency, you are looking at a situation where you are required to do ×2 of the classrooms that you already have.
Okay.
For you to quite hit those guidelines. And without doubt, that's not something that is feasible. It's not something that we are going to be able to achieve. So it is a question of agreeing as a country that these are the resources we have. This is how much, this is what is required and this is what we can do. But we always keep trying to achieve the ideal. And I don't think there will be a time when we will say, we have it right, let us now go and do it. And I think,
would you say it's unfair for us to expect more from the government?
No, it's never unfair. The government must continue being asked to provide more. That's the work of the government.
Right.
The government must always provide that which it is possible for it to provide. And you know where it becomes difficult in our country, and I don't want us to drift toward that side, is that the problem with our resources is that there is always an aspect of misuse. And this is what must continue being dealt with. But without wanting to get into that whole area, the thing is that we must continue asking the government to provide, to do more. But again, but there is also the responsibility of the parent. And I want to agree with what my colleague said, that again, we must make it, let us not create an impression in the country where you do nothing and you expect everything to be done for you. I think it's not our way of life as Kenyans. We have a lot to play. Buying the mask, providing shoes to children, buying books, pens and rest. Even when the families are struggling, it's always good to make sure that the parent has that responsibility. But we shouldn't stop there. At least now, we will be able to tell, perhaps later in the day, how many or what kind of a percentage of children came with masks, because you cannot tell until they have reported. What kind of support was available? I can say from, like we have heard from Kisumu, they have the UNICEF which is helping, and I know there are a couple of areas where help will be seen in the course of the day, in the course of the week, in the course of the month. And then the government again will be able to assess and see where do we need to come in strongly. But again, look at what the government did last night. If you look at that communication for the president, it was really heavily on issues of schools, education. And while I also didn't want us to extend this curfew by any amount of time, it also made sense for us to assess where are we now that there were a lot of travels that are happening. We are also having children back to school. Where are we in 2, 3, 4 weeks? Are we in a place to go full blast, or So I think that cautionary statement that came, or advice that came from the government, is also helping us to move. My appeal is that we are in this together. Let us face it and do everything that is possible. And I want to appreciate what is being done by the county government. Let's get our children back to school. As
we get our children back to school, one sector that is crucial and very important is the transport sector. So joining us via phone is Simon Kimutai from the Matatu Owners Association, so that he can also tell us how it is that they have prepared and what the morning is like for them at this time when we're having most of the parents and most of the students trying to find their way back to school. If you can hear me, Simon.
I can hear you very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So tell us what it is like, of course, on the roads this morning. The Matatu industry is very crucial to, be used, of course, to ferry students from point A to point B to schools and all that.
Thank you. One, it is that it's our responsibility to provide movement. Okay.
Yeah.
We have invested in this area where our work is to transport human beings or Kenyans from one destination to the other, be it students, be it normal communities moving from, and any other person who would want to have that travel. So this time, it's been a while before we transported students back to school or from school to home. And we know very well what has been happening. COVID-19 has devastated the industry, and we are pleased that at least there would be movement of students now back to school. And as we say, we still would observe the protocols that have been provided by the Ministry of Health and Passport. And what we have asked our members and all the circles in the country is that those protocols must be observed. People must sanitize before they go. They must be having a mask placed in the right position.
Simon, let's acknowledge that the matatu industry has notoriously flouted those rules, and that you will acknowledge, or you will agree with me, if at all you use the matatus, you realize that literally there's nobody who washes or even sanitizes their hands before they get into the matatu. And even worse is as the matatu is back into carrying 100% capacity, especially at least in most parts of the country. What will be done to ensure that that discipline, or the discipline that is needed, is gotten?
I want to state one thing. It is a collective responsibility to ensure that everybody observes the protocols, so we can keep a claim to an industry. One is that the county governments were supposed to provide water at every time and provide soap. So you can't blame public transport matatus for the same. A passenger must come in wearing a mask. A passenger must not allow themselves to be extra passengers. So we don't need to say what you're saying, that we are blaming and notoriously doing that. It is a responsibility of every person. Personal responsibility must be put in place, because one is that it's a matter of life and death. Infection is really devastating, killing people and making them sick. So it's important for everybody to understand that ours is to ensure that we remind you. We cannot put a mask on your face by force. So it is a personal responsibility to any person who is using the service. So let's not go into blame games.
Well, all right, that's interesting. Maybe argument for another day, even as we take a look at the fact that indeed President Uhuru Kenyatta has also extended the night curfew and all this that would be considered as key factors that would, trigger the spread even further. That is including social distancing, which is one of the things that, ails most of the schools today. Gentlemen, you will allow us to go a little bit fast so we can capture a wide area in regards to this. And of course, thank you for that, Simon Kimutai. You can hold on the line. Maybe later on we'll come back to you. But meanwhile, let's proceed to the gentleman that we have here. And the country has about 23,000 public primary schools with more than about 12 million pupils and more than 3 million students. That is also in secondary schools, and not counting learners in private institutions. We do not want to look at what other countries have done in terms of preparing for this. There are others that have been considered to have done well. There are a majority that have been considered to have done poorly in terms of getting their students back to class. Our CS says that children can proceed and learn from, under trees. So we're going back to that particular area. And one of the viewers has sent that as like, this is pretty much poor to even think about or talk about. What does it tell us about the state of matters education in the country, especially at this point when we're saying, let's have our students go back to school?
Thank you so much. I'd like to upload Professor Magoha. I think the media took his comments out of context in regards to learning under trees. I think he was spot on, because you find in some areas they have a vast land with very few classes. So it makes sense that having the children learn under trees. In fact, it is fun when children learn under trees, especially, for example, I'm also a Kiswahili and history teacher. Once you take the children under a tree, maybe you're reading a sight book, you're discussing about a certain hero in Kenya, and they are under trees, the wind is blowing well, so the learners tend to enjoy, and I think the prof was spot on. But I think the issue that is really the elephant in the room is about the human resource.
Yes.
We have quite a number of teachers that shall deliberately not report because they have underlying conditions. Others have quit, especially in the private sector. Since March, some teachers have not been paid. Others went to do some tasks. So they will not come back to come and earn peanuts because perhaps whatever they started is working out.
Okay.
And therefore, there is going to be a human resource aspect when schools open. Remember, before COVID-19, Kenya had a shortage of about 100,000 teachers. So we have others, as I've said, who are going to opt for early retirement. Others are not going to come back. So there is that aspect that the government ought to have improved.
Okay.
And more importantly, it is all about capitation. About a week ago, we had the primary school head teachers lamenting that they don't have funds to prepare for opening. So how do we expect these particular head teachers to have a seamless, carrying out of operations in these particular schools? So that issue of funding ought to be addressed by the government. And it is, I think, quite sad that this issue of capitation, you will have the heads lamenting every time school open. This is not the first time. A couple of years back, we've had schools opening and then the government sending the capitation late, or you find that the head teachers are required to take care of the learners without those particular funds. So as much as the government has really tried as managing this particular crisis, I think there are some areas that it needs to fasten that human resource aspect, which is going to really affect our children. And then there's also that issue of capitation, because without money, really, you cannot run a school.
Well, one of the key things that people have been talking about on Mheshimiwa Speaks is that, we can put that money that is meant for BBI to deal with so many issues that Kenyans are facing right now. But that later. Many have argued, and you've also heard Mheshimiwa saying that, he's one of the few people who believe that maybe we should have had our students go back to school as early as October or even earlier. So the argument on ground has been that it was a terrible decision for the government to proceed and actually, cancel the school calendar, or maybe alter the school calendar courtesy of COVID-19. And considering that back then we had few cases, and we are getting to this point where, well, the cases are a little bit higher, in as much as we also acknowledge that over time the numbers have been going down. Do you suppose that it was a terrible decision for the government to have made that? And the action that we're taking right now, is it a polite way of saying that we have surrendered the fact that we've acknowledged that there's really nothing much we can do about COVID? Let's just have our students back to school and leave our lives in the hands of the maker.
I think what the government has done is to be cautious, and I think the government has done the right thing. We have seen, for example, in the neighboring countries. And I'll take the example of Somalia, where I have worked for some time. The schools closed in April, but they reopened in August. Okay. Yeah, and they've done that with some considerable success. Okay. Yeah. For the Kenyan context, I think we had a situation where the infections were rising, and a second wave was expected. And I think the best thing would have been to cushion the parents and communities and school children from getting infected when schools reopen without planning. But Linda, I wanted to go back to the issue of innovation that was mentioned by Professor Magoha. Yeah. I think what the minister meant was, let's make use of available spaces. Okay. I think which is the right thing to do. And as the Mheshimiwa said, I think it's the responsibility for all the stakeholders to respond to this particular issue. I think the parents have responsibility. We have seen in very many contexts where temporary learning spaces have been set up. I think the Constituency Development Fund, and maybe Mheshimiwa can talk about this. Yeah. We've seen it in places where they have contributed to school infrastructure. And I think together, this multi-stakeholder approach, we will be able to address the issue of social distancing. Yeah.
All right. Is that then to speak about UNICEF and UNESCO coming on board to fund this process of having our students going back to school? At some point in October, they were also, instrumental in terms of ensuring that our students are back to school, or the few that were going back to school back then. Does it then mean that in as much as maybe the situation is not better, it's a clear way that we have gotten the blessings from them? Coming to you, John Owiti.
I think that coming here is very nice, because when we are talking of education, the government, the teacher, or the school administration, the parents, the three parties must be brought together. Then the child now comes in between. And allowing children to go to school at this particular time is the best we could do done for them. Yeah. Because remember, in a normal situation, this time, this is January, there's children that should have joined class 1. There are children that should have joined Form 1. There are students that should have joined universities. And if we have to hold on for all that period of time, we are going to create a backlog that we may not be able to manage. So it's very important, and we really appreciate that there are partners that are ready to come in and help in the manner that they can do it. Because as much as we talk of the government can do its part as it's doing, but will not be enough, because the number of enrollment in schools is increasing all the time. So I think the challenge which is here is that we need to take this head on and move on. And what we just need to advise now is that the government officers would now not be in the offices. They should now operate in the fields and collect the data, so that within the next 2-3 weeks, we'll be able to report back and say, this is where we are, and these are some also that we need to look at, so that we improve on it as we go along. Because if we say that we sit back and wait till COVID ends, we don't know when the end will come, and it may create a disaster in the country.
All right, so Witi, thank you for that. And we have live pictures from Mwiki Primary School. Our reporter Sharon Baranga is there. As you can see, I guess this is them standing out there for assembly, and you can clearly tell that they are trying so much to ensure that all is well catered for in terms of maintaining that social distance and students having their masks on. One of the schools in Nairobi County that is pretty much highly populated, of course, begs the question of just how much has been done towards ensuring that the students are protected, but above everything, towards ensuring that students also keep that social distance. As many would argue, it is probably the best thing that we could have done to have our students back to school, and we can try all means possible, or have our teachers doing all that they can to ensure that the students are well protected in a school. So Sharon Baranga will be giving us updates of what is happening down there, what modes of preparations have been set, whether indeed they have met the expectations of the guidelines provided for by the Ministry of Health, and whether indeed the students feel safe, whether they'll have a chance to have a conversation with the parents who are dropping their students to school, and probably get to tell us whether the parents feel like their students are safe, if they have the confidence to send their students back to school. So as we're getting that picture, or the picture down there, we hope that Sharon prepares a report for us soonest. But coming to you, Mushimiwa, and now that we spoke about the CDF kitty and bursaries, one of the key things that have been looked at in terms of financing and all that as instrumental towards making changes, and I've seen different members of parliament doing different things. We all know that this sits squarely within your very docket. What has been done in Nyandarua, you've said so much has been achieved, but generally, do you suppose that much has come out from this particular kitty to cushion us, to help us at this particular point when we desperately need? And what would you say about the dissemination of funds or disbursement of funds to different regions in regards to that?
I think heading to that question is also to acknowledge that even as I said that perhaps we should have opened last year, been brought out. It's always good. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Yes.
So I appreciate that we needed to be safe, to be certain, to be cautious before we got to where we were. And also acknowledge that back in October, August, July, May, we didn't know much about this virus. Now we know. We know how it's likely to behave. What can we do to, stop its, spread? Another kind of thing. Of course, in addition to the fact that we are now more prepared than before, we have hospital capacity, the beds, ICU, provision of oxygen, cylinders nearer the people. So all these things have been done. So certainly we are in a better position to open than before. Of course, when you look at the student, you want the student back to school earlier than today.
Yes.
But all these things require that balance, and I think the government has done well to get the kids back to school today. And again, I really don't want to miss out on putting something on the innovation and commending Professor Magoha. I think he has been unfairly treated by the media, I must say. I must say so. I have met him severally, tried to encourage him as a person. The media has not been very, very kind to him.
Is it the media or is just reporting what it is that is
I think even the issue of when he made a comment about his disappointment with the way the school compound was, it was taken to a point where he was almost put at that tribunal and such things. And I think,
how is that supposed to be the media?
I don't think, well, maybe not the media, then maybe another sector, but reported by the media. So I think we need to be kind to these individuals who've been at the front, helping us fight this. It's not easy. I can tell you, being thrown out there, you're supposed to do things you have not done before, and you're dealing with new things. It's not easy. But I know, and we should expect more from them, but also encourage them as they continue. And I want to agree with him. You see, when we were going to school, even at the university level, the best place for me to revise and be prepared for an exam was at a tree, away from the people, out there. It is where you had the calmness, the peace of mind that you want. So being at a tree is nothing. It is not. You see, I think what we are mixing it with is that the nature of classrooms in our home areas has been used as a measure of poverty. If you have no classrooms in a neighborhood, that is an indicator of the level of poverty. If you go and find mud classrooms, again, an indicator of another kind of, So it's been taken with a negative connotation. That when you fight children at a tree, this must be the poor of the poorest, which is not. It's been the case, yes. But it is not that. It is not an area where you can actually learn. I went to a mad class, and I'm here. I have done all those degrees. It didn't stop me from progressing. So we need to separate this. That innovation and that thinking out of the box must be commended.
And speaking
I want to say this because on that issue of today, if you look at the hotels, the most expensive room is not the one in a block of concrete jungle. You go and find the most expensive hotels are where you get people under tents. They are literally almost sleeping outside. That's where you pay more. So it's really a question of innovation, and I think it is important for all schools to become innovative in a way of achieving this. And
Speaking
I want to commend.
Innovation,
I think it's good to commend this Mweki school. That number is not a small number by any standard, and you can actually see some good. It's a very encouraging thing to see as a country. But I am really amazed by the size of the school.
The size is a bit small. The population is quite huge. And remember, there are also private schools, that have closed down around there.
Many have, for the reasons that Mwalimu said. And teachers have gotten other things to do. Nobody was there to pay them since the school closed in March. So again, the human resource aspect needs to be paid. A lot of attention needs to be paid to that aspect more. You mentioned about transportation. Allow me to just bring in. I had the rare opportunity of seeing the train that is moving from Nairobi to Nanyuki. Of course, it's taking it's very slow. But I went to school, and every time I was going to school, I was using the train.
Okay.
It is a very important component in this whole process. We need to get these trains back.
Okay.
Charging people 200 shillings from here to Nanyuki, while the matatu is charging 1,500, you can actually see the kind of relief that you are giving to the parents.
Right.
This is the kind of support the government needs to do. We need those trains back.
Okay.
In places. But
All
on
right.
the issue of CDF, you allow me to say this, that I know virtually every member of parliament has had an input in the construction of classrooms and the rest. I know that, again, CDF board has tried to release funds. The considering funds is all over. It's not just in one aspect.
All right.
And but increasing the number of classrooms, helping in providing desks. I know what I'm doing today is providing extra water tanks. In addition, we are also going to be helping by giving some few masks, not to be the ones supplying, but supplementing what others are doing. So I know CDF has been useful, and members of parliament have played quite a crucial role, and we can do more.
Okay, that's good. Mheshimiwa will come back to get some more updates on that, but also we still have our reporter on ground, like I have said. Sharon gives us updates in regards to this. Later on, we'll have her. She says, indeed, the students have been told that they're going back to school, and interestingly, in Wiki, they'll be going in shifts. Some of them will go in class at 8 a.m., others come in at around 3 p.m. Social distances done, classes, of course, differently. And before we even get more updates on that, let's cross over to Kibra. Yes, Kibira, and Kibra better said, we have our very own Nanok Lauren, who is going to give us updates as we await the CS to come on board and tell us what, of course, his team is doing towards ensuring that this indeed is a streamlined process. Nanok, if you can hear me.
Yes, Linda, this is the day 4th January 2021 when the Ministry of Education said that all schools will reopen. And indeed, we are here at the Olympic Primary School to witness the reopening of schools, among other schools in the country. And Professor George Magoha, Cabinet Secretary of Education, is expected to supervise the reopening of Olympic Primary. And just before he arrives, remember that students have been home for nearly 9 months at home due to COVID-19, and as they stream into the schools, some of the requirements are expected to come in with. Face masks is a mandatory requirement, and they are required to have face masks at all times. Also, remember that school children will not be turned away because of lack of school fees, and therefore that is a key issue we are going to be looking at today. Remember, since morning, Linda, if I can brief you, I have been seeing students walking into different schools, rushing into the buses so that they cannot miss their trip to school, and therefore this is a very big day for students across the country, whether primary or secondary schools, to go back to school and continue with their learning after being home for nearly 9 months. And therefore here at the Olympic Primary School, we expect CS Professor George Magoha to arrive here shortly so that he can supervise the reopening of the school and also touch on a few things. Therefore, we'll be keen to listen to what he's going to say in with regards to reopening of schools today, the 4th of January 2021. Aside from that, as I live here at the Olympic Primary School, I'll be heading to different locations to see what students who have not yet arrived at their schools, maybe at the bus stops, at the bus stages, what they are up to as they make their way to the schools, whether they have enough fare. Remember, yesterday CS James Macharia said that matatu operators will not hike fare prices in order for the students not to get their way back to school, and therefore that will be a key issue I'll be looking into to see whether the fares are still the normal rates or they have hiked due to the reopening of schools today. And therefore here at the Olympic Primary, as you can see, many students are walking in. They are walking in one by one, masked up, of course, because masks are a mandatory requirement to get into the schools. We'll be looking into the classes to see the situation in there. But for now, we are waiting for the CS Education, Professor George Magoha, to arrive here so that he can give one or two sentiments or pointers regarding school reopening today morning. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Nanok Loren, for that comprehensive report. We're looking forward to hear from you later on the broadcast. But away from that, we go back to Simon Kimutai, who's also still on phone in regards to, of course, the matatu industry or transport at this particular time when we're having our students going back to school. And Simon, you've heard what Nanok speaks of, and indeed, just putting some stamp and, on what it is that the CS for Matters Education said, that there should not be any hiking of prices, especially at this point, and we know very well that this happens a lot. What has been done, and do you suppose that much has been done also by the government towards helping that particular industry, the transport industry at large, or it is just order and nothing much is being done to ensure that also their interests are catered for?
Very much for bringing me back. I think there are areas where you can do comparison. If you're going to compare trade,
it's not very clear on this end.
Sorry?
I don't know why I'm not getting you clear.
Okay. Let me go back to.
All right.
The mic. Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay. What I was saying is that what has been put there, especially on traveling at a cost, probably fare hike of normal fares, comparing train and probably what was a 14-seater, which has been reduced to an 8-seater now. One is that I want everybody to understand that public transport TSB in this country is purely business. No support on subsidies, paying taxes, and fuel, just like any vehicle which uses the same. And in any business doing, cost accounting is very important because people invest to get return of the investment. Well, that said, we have sensitized our members in Matatu Owners Association to be sensitive on the same, not to overdo it. One is that we have been operating on big losses. We are not able to meet the operational cost as required. And so everybody must understand that it's purely business and people invest to make profits from it. That said and done is that we ain't taking advantage of students going back to school. Normally in any market or of service or probably of goods, it is known that there are forces of doing business. That is, when supply and demand are not equilibrium, you will see some kind of probably differences in prices. So this is not exceptional. When today you're selling vegetable in the market and the supply is very little, you'll find that the prices will be high.
Okay.
And the same. Unfortunately, it's only public transport that is so visible. If you went today to buy tomatoes, for instance, you might get 3 for 100 shillings because of the supply. And when the supply is increased, you'll find there are 5 for the same amount. So it's all about business doing. But all said and done, I have asked my members to be very sensitive because COVID has devastated all of us. It's not only public transport. And but somehow we must meet our costs. That's very important. But all said again is that we are ready to provide a service. We've taken safety into big consideration that they must ensure that those using the service arrive at their destinations in one day, alive, that is. So we will be able to give that service. At the same time, we've said it is important for drivers not to get fatigued because at times that is part of that contributes towards crashes on our roads. That they have to make sure that they are not fatigued and they don't do many trips. The other one is about ensuring that everybody in the unit or in the matatu must be advised to place their mask in the right position, and it should be the right mask. we've also insisted that at least some sanitizer, all these are costs,
Okay.
be in the vehicle so that it can be used by the same people.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Simon Kimutai. We'll release you for now. Of course, we'll be coming back to you later on for more updates. And Mwalimu Jasper, evidently,
Mwalimu,
yes,
our solution to our transport issues
yes,
for our children is the matatus will continue playing their bit because they're in business, like
yes,
you have said. But the government must understand that is one area that you cannot leave it to the private sector. Public transport cannot help in this. We need, and as I mentioned, I saw magic again with the trains. If we can move our students with the trains, and they should be taken to all these parts of the security, and you can also have your own control measures.
Yeah.
And in terms of cost, it's amazing how much, because we lowered the taxes back in with the COVID to 14.
yes.
The Kimutai team did not lower the fares. I mean, so it's not going to be helpful. Not from that angle. Not from that angle.
All right, and the pictures down there are worrying, also to speak. While we acknowledge that indeed Mwiki Primary School has done well, honestly, do you feel any form of social distancing being?
I think that as Mwalimu weighs in because he's the one closer to the two.
Yes.
On top of the social distancing, I think it is not that you do, if you can't achieve social distance, you need to have the mask, you need to have sanitized. All these things are supposed to
there's one that
help one another.
Other,
yeah,
right?
all of them. There is a combination of all those factors that will lower the spread.
Okay.
We may not be able to achieve all of them
yes,
in that manner. But Mwalimu certainly is the one with the students.
Mheshimiwa is spot on, because you can imagine some of these young kids wearing a mask for 12 hours. It is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So I think it is incumbent upon the teachers to ensure that learners are safe in school, to mitigate any circumstance that can exacerbate that kind of spread. So I think I can say that yes, we ought to ensure social distancing, but let us not ignore the bottlenecks that are there. I'm giving you an example of young children. Sometimes they can even exchange their masks.
Yeah.
Sometimes going break, they will remove those particular masks. So it is upon us teachers, and teachers are generally creative people, to ensure that they help us to mitigate these particular crises. I'd like to talk about Mheshimiwa was talking about Professor Magoha. Yesterday I was watching him on television.
Yeah.
And after the interview, I said, wow, because the way he was communicating, you could be able to tell that government has really done something to effect the school reopening. However, previously, I think there was a shift. Previously, you could see the CS really bashing the journalists. And that time is the time that we needed clear communication.
Yeah.
Parents were struggling, so they needed to plan for it. You remember the CS saying, I don't know when schools will open. Oh, it is next week. No, it is next month. No, I don't know again. So I think that was a gray area. But I hope going forward,
he will be.
Yeah, he's going to do his best. And then there is also the communication aspect.
Yeah.
Because when you have these number of children in school, there are going to be those cases of COVID-19 like we had when the rest of the classes opened.
And that would have been my question. In the event that such happens, how do we quell the fears? How do we deal with this? Because it is likely to crop up.
Yes. Personally, I didn't like it the way the information was coming out when we opened the grade 4, class 8 and form 4, because it was all reporting cases here and there. I think that is where now the communication aspect comes in. That yes, we are going to have these particular cases. So how then in the education sector we should not cause panic, because you could be releasing numbers here, there, and then at the end of the day you cause panic and then does not help anyone.
So the thinking and reasoning of children and how they hold emotions is totally different. And God forbid, we hope that such cases do not crop up. But in the event that they do, how will they affect the children? Or how will they affect the children? And how do we get them to that point where indeed panic is not rife?
That now will be dependent on the communication aspect from the ministry. For example, you can go to a particular school and then you find 20 learners have contracted COVID-19, then it is upon the government to say, though there are some learners who have been discovered to have this COVID-19, but the government is doing ABCD to ensure that that is addressed. It should not be like it is statistics. Here there are 20 cases, etc. And you can look at a country like Tanzania, though people are bashing it about the transparency aspect, but you've never had them release those figures. And the country seems to be a bit calm. So it is time that we think about the education sector. I mean, releasing numbers. Does it have any effect? What if, I mean, we do some targeted testing, not necessarily random testing, because that is likely to cause panic. So it is time that the ministry employed a lot of wisdom in handling this particular issue.
Okay, and Mheshimiwa, interestingly, before we come to you, Mohammed, now, I'm just about to report what has happened on the ground. I don't know whether that will be looked at as a way of the media painting a bad picture of the CS. He just took an about turn, and he says he's not going to be in Kibra anymore, so we'll be going to different parts of the country or different schools. So we are yet to find out where. So Nanok Lauren will be keeping tabs to that so that we're able to update you accordingly. We're talking about, the closing down of private schools and everything and all that. We are worried of how much our students are going to be incorporated in these public schools and whether indeed there's going to be enough space. But coming to you, Mohammed, first, do you even think that there's proper understanding of what the terms will be like on ground? I overheard some parents asking, they had gone to buy uniform for their very young ones, the ones who are supposed to enroll. Interestingly, they're not supposed to enroll as early as this January. But most of the parents have no idea. Is it because they do not listen to what is being told out here in news and everything? I mean, is there a need for us to just paint a picture of what the terms will be like, so at least we get to understand at what point do we get in, and how do we get our students to school? And are they coming this year to learn for like the entire three terms, or it will be two terms and then they proceed to the next class? What is happening? Just what is the procedure?
Yeah, and the issue of adapting the school calendar as well as the exams timetable, it's actually a necessity. And the government has actually done that particular obligation. The calendar has been, taken out. It's available. But again, this boils down to the issue of communication. And I think the whole, setup around COVID, the government and of course all the stakeholders must build a robust system to communicate issues, And the issue of the school calendar, as you have said, is quite confusing for very many parents. For example, I was reading those who are to start, kindergarten first-timers, they'll have to wait until June. I see maybe some parents have actually bought school uniforms for some of these children. So I think it's quite important that this is broken down in a way that Kenyan parents can understand.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That is necessary. John Awiti, if you can hear me, this has been dubbed as, a year that has been lost, so to speak. That is 2020. And of course, we're having our students resume back to class, for their second term until the 19th, and they will proceed for break and all that. There's a bit of confusion in regards to this. Do you suppose the teachers themselves have understood this properly?
Thank you very much. We don't blame anybody here because nobody expected COVID to come, and it came and created the uncertainty that we are facing right now. But, it has come out and interfered with our normal education calendar in the country. And everybody is trying to adjust themselves towards this. And you can see that what has come out is that if we are not very careful also, we may emphasize more on the safety and the security of the children at the expense of the provision of quality education at the same time. So we'll be expected to involve all the stakeholders to take their part very well like one of us have already explained explicitly, that the human resource is a challenge here. And this is what is affecting the teacher very much. Because even the private schools, a good number of them have closed and they may not open very soon. Even this statement that the children that have gone to the public schools to learn there and later go and do exam in their previous private centers may find that when they go there, those private sectors are no longer centers anymore. So this is a challenge that right now a good number of teachers have retired. A good number of teachers have been told not to step in the schools from age 58 to 60, and that's a big number. And but the number of children are swelling. So this is now the challenge that needs to be addressed, so that as much as we take care of the masks, distancing, and other things, the quality of the kind of education being provided is not compromised. And this is now the challenge that faces the teacher. The teacher that is there now, what is he supposed to do different from what he used to do before the COVID? And the TAC also need to look at this and now make sure that they don't simply just replace. They don't simply just do the normal engagement of giving schools, secondary school, 5,000 per year, as they always to do. This time round, they have to share with the government and ensure that we have a fairly reasonable number of teachers employed to take care of the situation which is there. And the Ministry of Education needs now to also engage the teacher at more depth to ensure that the teacher now does extra. A teacher must go further than what he used to do, because apart from the normal teaching in the class, there is this other rearrangement that you are supposed to take care of the children and make sure that their safety is taken care of at every given time. So some teachers may not have had this one here because of the kind of training some get, where they only emphasize more on the teaching and the content. So this one here is the time now we need an all-round teacher, the teacher who understands the child, the teacher who understands what is supposed to teach in class, and the teacher who understands the environment and the parent included. So it is something that we have to grow along with. Thank you.
That in the event that their demands are not met, also they will proceed to, on strike. And such has been the case for the longest of time. We see the doctors today and, the different, of course, cadres on matters, health, on strike, and which is pretty much unfortunate. What would then mean to the quality of education as we speak today? I mean, we've seen our students declining in terms of performances and all that. So in such a scenario, are we likely to experience a huge drop, or we remain positive that such is not going to be the case?
We should remain positive all the time. And as most people have pontificated, this is unprecedented situation. Nobody prepared for it. So we ought to adjust, to be flexible, to be able to adjust to the current circumstance. Mm-hmm. You've raised the issue about teachers, and Mr. Whitty has really talked about it, that as a teacher, when you go to class, try to understand the psychological atmosphere of this particular child that you're teaching. It's not all about content all the time. And I think a child who is psychologically stable can learn very well. Then there is the issue about teachers. When schools reopened, we have heard several who have been hospitalized. Others have passed on as a result of this particular pandemic. I think the government, through the Teacher Service Commission, need to address this particular issue. For example, you have the private school teachers. some of these teachers do not have medical covers. So if they contract COVID-19, who is going to take care of them? Because you find that some of the employers do not even guarantee their health. So all to do with the human resource ought to be addressed, because a motivated teacher will work more harder.
All right, well, that's pretty much incredible to note. And speaking of the quality of education, and so today we still ask the very same question: what is left of our students as we look at that? So what procedures need to be incorporated to ensure that our students still get quality education, education that is not going to be compromised in any way, even as we look at the interest of the teachers?
In terms of the quality of education, I think it's quite important, and in a situation like this, the quality of education gets compromised. And I think one thing that could be done is for the government authorities to activate their quality assurance units. I think there's a need to do regular visits and kind of monitoring missions to school. And one of the things they could do is actually to check out the compliance with the COVID-19 procedures, protocols that has been put in place by the Ministry of Health, but also to ensure that they monitor the quality of learning. And then the other important thing is that I think I've been reading in the newspaper, I'm not sure if the government has released the capitation grants.
Yes.
And I think this will be important in providing the necessary ingredients, such as the teaching learning materials, even maybe pay for water bills, electricity bills, and this will actually all go towards improving the learning environment in schools. And
I'll still come back to you on the other programs that have were in existence. We're talking about the rollout of the CBC, competence-based curriculum. We'd love to know how this would be affected, but as you can see on screen, again, yes, CS Magoha is now in Kibra, and those are live pictures. And yes, he's just trying to inspect the reopening of schools in Kibra. That should be Olympic. And like we had said, or as Nanok Lawrence says, we'll be getting updates on technically what he's going to say. Remember, he said that he is going to tour different parts of the city alongside his officers, who will also be touring different schools to inspect and ensure that yes, the procedures are being looked into, so that at least we have our students safe back to school. So Nanok Lauren will be giving us updates on what he will be saying. And he says that there's a shortage of desks. That is according to my reporter on ground. That is Nanok Lawrence says that Magoha acknowledges that indeed there's a shortage of desks for the students, and the government is going to look into that. As you can see, making phone calls awareness. We can always assume that they are strategic phone calls towards ensuring that things are streamlined, questioning a couple of individuals on how these desks are going to be, distributed to different schools. Importantly, also the masks that he had talked about, and he says that this will also be distributed to different schools. He says that the government has about like 7.5 masks at their disposal to proceed to give to poor children, and also the Ministry of Health has something that it has to give to the students. Let's listen into that particular call.
Huyo shule yako na pesa ya kutosha. We still have another 10 million if you can apply the way we want for Nairobi. So you will definitely get your desks, but all children are the same, eh? Hakuna, lakini utaniambia nitapata wapi nikitoka hapa. I want to come to you. Lakini let us have those desks here in the next 2 hours. Is that good enough? Hello? Hello?
Well, we had to eavesdrop to that one.
We know that you are covering him live.
No, we had to eavesdrop on that one. So we get it raw and clear. So you don't say it's about the media, right?
I don't know.
Yes. All right.
But I think it is important to ask ourselves, and I was thinking about my neighbor Mohammed here, and the difficulties that the region they come from, they go through before they attain levels of education. But I wanted to say that those difficulties, including lack of classrooms and the rest, has not deterred that community from being among the most educated now in the country. And we should perhaps learn from some of the difficulties that they have gone through. Excesses at times make you think, relax in your way of imagination. But in terms of communicating, I also wanted to suggest, in line with what we are saying, that we must avoid this negative reporting. How would it be if, for example, you were now to go out the schools and see the school that is most innovative, where the teachers are showing the highest level of imagination of how they are coping with this COVID maneno, and highlighting that more as opposed to where we have failed, because we must work together and try and bring out the best in this. But I think, and I know the ministry has this, one of the things that came out with the COVID-19 was the 3 o'clock national address that was coming from the ministry through the minister. We all got to know that we need to get updated quickly on COVID-19. There's going to be a news item. And it became very easy for us as a country to move together. The Ministry of Education must develop, and I know they do, they must make it known to us. What is their channel of communication? Is it through their website? Because today you cannot rely on print media. They are behind in terms of they bring news the following day when things were lead time. What is the channel of communication? Where should we latch to when we want to know what are we doing in the kindergarten? Is it in their website? This needs to come out quickly so that the many questions that are allowed are answered lead time, and we can be able to see that. But I think we have also to give hope. I don't know how quickly the vaccine are coming, because these 58-year-old teachers needs to be vaccinated. I thought they were told not to. They were not. The advice was that they
TSC had directed them to work from home and
But I also saw another advice from the same authorities that even if they are in school, they should make sure that they are teaching from or within areas that there is free flow of air. Meaning that again under the trees, in the open fields and such places. But I think it is crucial to mention that this is our way of life. This virus is not going. We are only going to manage it. So we must get to understand that one of the things that we like most is shaking hands. And looks like shaking hands is one of the easiest way of passing on this virus. So some of these things we must agree and start letting Kenyans know on ourselves to that's a way of life. I remember when I was doing a campaign, one of the colleagues went loud saying, "This is a very proud member of parliament." And it is. Of course, it was not true that, he doesn't even shake people's hands. Those kind of behavior. I drew a while ago, if you try to wear a mask, you are looking snobbish. These are things, there is a little change, and we must start getting used to it. But let me caution my colleagues. We shouldn't play politics.
Politics is one thing that
because we are going to throw in politics. The 22 campaign, we will start perhaps bashing government because it has not done this. If we remove politics out of this and allow us to manage this aspect properly, it is for the benefit of these young people. If you are a leader and kind in heart, you will avoid politicizing these aspects. I can tell you there are so many things I'm trying to do in my constituency, but I want to do them outside politics, because it's the life of this young man that you are dealing with.
All right,
this
as you
young
can see,
girl.
the students in class already, that is still Mwiki Primary School. Sharon is just painting the picture, or giving us live pictures there of what the situation is like. It's going to be a toll, having been away from books for quite a while, just to catch up and all that. But we can only wish them nothing but the best, whether this is what is said by the government and whether this achieves what it is that the Ministry of Health seeks to achieve. I think we've also had the guest expounding some more on that, and as they would argue, it's not just that component of social distancing, but also equally much. CS Magoha inspecting the classes, that is in Olympic Primary School, Kibra, where our reporter Nanok Lauren is. And yes, seems like he's a bit satisfied with how it is that the teachers have planned and have set up the students. And yes, we'll be giving you updates on the same. Oh, that's interesting. You had to fix the mask and all that. I
tell you, it's a very difficult time.
Yes, just a reminder that, well, it's not just about wearing the mask, but equally wearing it proper. So we'll be getting these updates. Remember, the government speaks of ensuring that the poor students or the needy students are able to be, given masks by the government. And he talks of about 7.5 masks at the disposal or at our disposal. And so this, he says, they have already identified the students who would be needy and would be needing those masks that would be given by the government, also insisting that parents who are able to buy masks for their student, they should proceed and do that. Also speaks of a scenario where no student is going to be allowed or is going to be sent away from school because they do not have school fees, but also reminds the parents that if you're able to pay for the same, kindly proceed and do so, because it is necessary for proper running of their respective institutions. He says that, of course, that the government is equally highly dependent on the CDF kitty in regards to helping to boost the situation on matters education in the country. And yes, it looks like he's preparing himself to address the press, and so we'll be crossing over there live to listen to what it is that he will be talking about. He also maintained that we've received a couple of donations from KCB, that is the masks, and also from UNICEF. The same ones will also be distributed to different students who could be needing this. He maintains that at least every child should have 2 masks, or so to speak, to ensure that this also is looked into. He says that yes, every teacher should be week or should always maintain or insist and ensure that every other student in class has their mask. So we'll be getting updates of his address, or maybe we'll be crossing over there to get to hear what he has to say. But let's come back to studio and discuss that aspect of CBC. Mohammed, you were to expound on this. There are other programs that were ongoing before COVID-19 came on board, equally very important programs. Remember, we were at that point where we're trying to see whether indeed the pilot program of the competence-based curriculum, how is this going to be affected, and a couple of other programs that are indeed pretty much important.
Linda, as you know, the CBC is meant to promote practical application of skills and knowledge. Its implementation has already started, but for this program to succeed, there are critical
Mohammed,
elements.
allow me to cut you short briefly. Let's cross over to Kibra, where the CES for Matters Education, Professor George Magoha, is addressing the press. And yeah,
I think you went into the classroom. Apart from overcrowding, everything else is normal. Every child is properly masked. Most of those masks they are wearing were provided by the government of the Republic of Kenya, together with our collaborators. In terms of ensuring that we don't have a crisis here, even though we had already delivered the economic stimulus package desks, I have decided, because I think the president gave me those powers, to vary 1 or 2 things, that we shall give another 140 desks to this school. I am going to pick some of the desks which were ready, which were meant for another school, which may not be having a very tight problem like this. 70 of them will be here today, and during the course of the week, a balance of 70 will have been fabricated and brought. Then we shall fabricate and take to the other person that I was talking to. Otherwise, you have seen with your eyes that if we work together, the spirit, when you look at the spirit of the body and spirit of the teacher, the body and spirit of the children, do they require encouragement or discouragement? Let us encourage them. That's all I can say for now. We may not be perfect. There are very many children here. If water becomes a problem, we are on standby to ensure that they have water, so that they are able to wash their hands when they come out. And I think that's all.
Was it considering that there are many parents who will be seeking to have their children come to the school with an already high...
This school will not be available, because you can see for yourself that it's 7,000, it's 4,700. So this one, even though it is popular, it's not likely that they'll take many children. There are many other schools around that we will make sure the children go to. You can see for yourself that I've ordered a variation of shifting of desks, which were supposed to go to another school this morning, to come here. And I will then go to the school where the desks were supposed to go, so that I am fair to those children also, to be sure that their pressure is not as much as the one here. Yes, Inatosha.
Maybe just the last one, Professor.
Ask me things related to
Yes, you know, in Kibera we have a high population of pupils here, and recently railway corporation demolished some structures along the railway. Maybe as the CS for Education, have you followed up the fate of those students who were demolished, whose schools were demolished, and maybe the fate of those who were affected with COVID-19?
Your question is not fair, because when we demolish the building of the parents, it is the parents' duty to bring the child to school. If a child is brought here and there is space, we shall take. If there is no space, my people, where is the sub-county director of education? We have somebody who is here who will ensure by constitution that that child is admitted where there is a vacancy. We are trying to avoid a situation where a popular school like this one is overrun by children, so that some of them can't sit down. So you don't have to worry unless you have a specific case. If you give us details, we shall go to where the rubber meets the ground. I think because what you're asking is basically a story. It is one of those stories people talk about. So if you have a child who has gone to a government school and cannot be placed in that school and another one, then tell us and we shall act. I must go now because I want to ensure that the desks are brought here, and that I also go to placate the other school. We have to do all this together, because you don't even have to reach me. You as a journalist, if you know somebody, you can direct the child to come to school. If it is too full, you advise that child to go to the next school. Okay.
Well, Professor George Magoha there addressing the press in regards to the inspection process of students going back to school. Key things to note, especially in this particular school, he says that already the school is full in capacity with 4,700 pupils and therefore cannot accommodate or incorporate more students. Of course, this question arising or coming from the fact that a majority of private schools have closed down, and then the question would be how many public schools are able to incorporate these students and guarantee them a position or a space, guarantee them space. In this particular one, he says the Sub-County Director of Matters Education is set to ensure that all learners are placed in, schools, especially those ones whose schools were closed down. And like he says, that this particular one is already full in capacity. If there's any student who would want to be admitted, then maybe they should look for space in a different school. Still on Matters CBC as we close down on that.
To continue on the successful implementation of the CBC, I think one critical ingredient will be the teachers. And in this context that we are in at the moment, teachers require mobilization. For example, where I come from, I think already there were teacher shortages. Yesterday, if you've read the communication from the government, the government said those senior teachers who are above 58 years should, deliver, through remote process or under kind of trees where there's free circulation of air. So in a context where the teachers are not mobilized, and they have not been given a proper training. We are not in a situation where we can say most of the teachers have been trained on the CBC, and this COVID might have disrupted the training of teachers. So we have a problem around the issues related to teachers. And then the second issue is that with the protocols on management of COVID in schools, and if you read again the communique that was given yesterday, it says, even interactions, kind of exposure visits, inter-school activities are actually not allowed, and that also does not augur well for the CBC process. But above all, currently the school finances are kind of constrained, and again with the delays in disbursement of fund to schools, this also constrains the provision of necessary materials that could be used to promote the CBC learning.
Okay. Well, of course, activities have been suspended for now. That is extracurricular activities until that time when we can say that it is safe for our students. Mheshimiwa, coming to you, the government was supposed to release about 7 billion to private schools to cushion them from the effects of the pandemic. But of course, indeed, the money was not released, so to speak. What do you think would be the fate of the learners and the owners of the closed schools? And do you suppose there's something that the government could have done to limit this closure of numerous schools?
Well, like I said earlier, we must continue expecting help from the government. But the reality is that even the government resources have a limit, and we have seen it perhaps more clearly in this country last year than ever before. But I think it goes down to really appreciating the laws that we have to play as the private sector. And Kimtai was on the line a little earlier, clearly saying, or bringing it out, that remember, we in the matatu industry are in business, and what we are trying to do is to make some money out of our investments.
Yes.
And equally, in the private sector, and the people in the private sector of our education sector, or the people who have invested in the private schools in this country are also they are in business. There are very few of them are out there just doing it for as charity. So even as we call upon the government to help out the private sector, the school, of course, is a special category because of the nature of the investment, and we are dealing with the provision of education to young people, and education is key to the development of any country. So they are playing a very crucial role. But as we look upon the government to help the private sector, it must always be in our mind that you are actually helping a private investor. So the government may not quite have done what it had promised to do. Okay. But the flip side of that coin is, look at even the public schools, the schools that are squarely, under the government. And it is, we look upon no other source of further than the government. And the resources are still short. We still don't have enough to help deal with the public sector. So I wouldn't want to bash the government for not having stepped in the private sector. But let me also say this. I think now than never before it's clear that the government and those of us who have responsibility, who are holding positions that are supposed to impact on the lives of the people in a given way, we need to wake up. We saw the hospitals. It got to a point where the hospital that you could be lashed to is that public dispensary next to your house that you have never bothered with because you've always thought that you had money to rush yourself to Aga Khan, to Nairobi Hospital, and to the rest. It became clear that the first point of call could easily be the dispensary next to you. And you have been having you had an opportunity to improve it to a level where you also can become comfortable if you think others do not enjoy the same kind of comfort like yourself, but you never did it. here we are now with the schools also. We are now in a situation where our children have no other alternative other than going to the public schools. That we never improve to the levels that we thought should be good for our children. In other words, it's important for us to make sure that that facility that is being given by government is at a level that you and every other person will be comfortable to have her child in, or you even yourself in his case of the hospital, even you can also be happy or you feel comfortable. If you're feeling comfortable being in that hospital, then it is comfortable to every other Kenyan, so that we avoid this class treatment. This issue of the schools is a wake-up call. Let us invest in our public institutions adequately, so that at any given time we have schools that any child would feel happy and comfortable and would benefit going to.
All right, speaking of which, let me just take a look at some feedback here. And Pius Nunda is watching and says, with these calls to deliver the desk could not have been made earlier. Well, that is one thing. He said, truth be told, Olympic Primary is already full and overstretched, and more specifically during this time of COVID-19, parents should not insist on more admissions. And he says Professor Magoha has demonstrated great leadership, and he is on the ground at least to ensure that matters run well. That is an acknowledgement also. And we take a look at a different conversation. Yes, we have Lewis who is watching. Lewis acknowledges that indeed CS Magoha at least has tried in making things a little look better, and again he is recovering his lost glory. Another one, yes, we have, here we are. Henry Muliro says is listening from Turkana. Ibrahim Miheso says Mukuru Ruben following and Kusoma Chini Mti is back again. Well, it's pretty much unfortunate also to speak. We still have so much feedback coming our way, but we drop that one. Kimutai, we come to you.
Again,
and we're still on the transport sector, but then again I think above being in the transport sector, you also a stakeholder on matters education. You probably are a parent. What do you make of the entire process of reopening of schools? Of course, business is coming back to the matatu industry, because now every other morning there will be students that you're ferrying from point A to point B. What do you make of the entire process so far? Kimutai? I think we lost Kimutai, but all the same, it's all good. We're almost winding up the session. And it is very important that we take a look at the transition process and underlying conditions, especially at this particular point. And you brought on board a very important aspect, Mheshimiwa, and I think I'll loop you, Mwalimu, in regards to the same. The NAT and TAC have been on loggerheads, and I think that is one thing we have seen, and of course accusing each other of unilaterally suspending the 2017 to 2021 CBA and blocking the benefits of the members. Is it not going to affect the continuous learning process after the resumption that is today? And are we going to see a case similar to that of the doctors?
Thank you, Linda. The relationship between TSC and NAT is a sad one, because I think TSC decided to punish NAT. After Wilson Sosion leading several strikes, having had stands in regards to a couple of matters, and therefore TSC went on an expedition of ensuring that NAT dies. And they began by not promoting members who are allied to NAT. Teachers who are allied to NAT do not get much benefit in regards to other teachers. And therefore, that kind of relationship is not healthy at all. I think it is time that the president himself intervened to ensure that NAT, which has been a very vibrant union, resurrects again, because as things stand now, anybody can tell you that the coffers of NAT are dry. From about 72 million per month, now they are getting about 4 million. They can't pay for a medical cover, they can't pay for their rent of the offices, so it is really tough, and it is sad to see NAT die like that. But I'd like to plow back a bit, if you allow me, talk about the private schools that Mheshimiwa had mentioned. It is a wake-up call for the government to look at the opening of private schools. For example, when you open a private school, are you able to sustain your workforce?
Yeah.
Because you can imagine, since March, you are a family man, you're married, you have children, you have dependents, you've not been paid. And I hope it is time the country adopts the model of Botswana. In Botswana, private schools are paid by the government. If you are a proprietor of a private school, you will give money to the government, and then the government is going to pay these private school teachers. And that will be able to eradicate that discrepancy in salaries. You find in Kenya, a graduate will go to a school, the board of management will pay him 10,000. And then you go to other school, a teacher is paid 100,000.
Yeah.
So that will be able to equalize the remuneration aspect. So it is a wake-up call to the government to ensure that the lives of these learners are protected, especially such a time, because if there was a requirement that for you to stay afloat in the private sector, you must have this amount of money, so that the teachers, the learners' lives are cushioned. Then lastly, I hope what Professor Magoha doing is a good thing, but I hope he puts in place systems, because once Magoha exits and a new CS comes in, are we able to continue this kind of invigilation? And I think this should percolate to the sub-county directors. They should also do an equivalent inspection of assessment of quality standards in those particular places. Thank you.
Okay.
And to come in on the issue of the private schools, I think it's important that the government sees private schools as a viable enterprises. I think they're quite important because one, they expand education opportunities for our children. I mean, also parents must have choices of taking their children to either private or public schools. And again, it's the responsibility of the government to ensure that one, there's an enabling environment for these private schools to thrive, but also in the event of shocks like what we have, there's a kind of a stimulus package. Otherwise, look at the number of people that are employed in these private schools. There are so many, and the government cannot employ everyone. So in the event of a shock, the government should be there to bail out these private schools.
All right, and at this point, you talk of innovations, you talk of what it is that we've learned out of the entire process. We realize that technology is key. We realize that at some point in time, we're talking about, students learning from home, virtual learning and all that. Do you think so much has been done towards getting us to that point where we'll pick up from the lessons and, at least transform the education sector completely?
We had, there was that, let me just throw in one word on the issue of the NAT and TSC.
Okay.
Now that we have Socioni in Parliament, I think one of the things about any trade union is that, and this is something, is not just going to hit, I sympathize with the NAT. I don't see it ever coming back in the manner that we may want. Because when it is so strong, it even challenges the political establishment.
Yeah.
And when a union is that strong, it actually means that it can actually, like it has happened in other places, even brought about revolutions, determine about the political leadership of a country.
Yeah.
And they must know always that they will be fought. And if they are aware of that, then they must make sure that they are not that vulnerable. I think the NAT leadership pushed it to a point where they forgot to be cautious. They opened too many windows. And it was now easy. Remember, the former, I think the second president of the Republic worked harder than any other person to try and extinguish NAT. But he wasn't, because of the shrewdness of the leadership then. And even now, Socioni has done very well. But I think there are places, he let it loose. And people easily got in. To a point now, it is going to be very difficult to reconstruct NAT to anything that has been there.
And is it the entity itself, or it's Socioni?
No, it's the entity.
individual?
It's the entity. So Kioni was just one of the very active actors.
Okay.
It is an entity that has always been a pain in management of political affairs in this country.
Okay.
And when you are running politics and you think there is another bloc there that can easily influence voters from one side to the other,
Okay.
you've gone beyond where you should, and you are actually inviting others to hit you very hard.
Okay.
And I think that is where what NAT came out. When it looked like it was taking political realignment, the teachers overexposed themselves, and I think, unfortunately, it's very difficult to have the trade union movement outside politics.
Yeah.
But the consequences of being too close and being a key player in politics are like the ones we are having with the NAT. On the issue of innovation, I think we haven't done enough.
Yeah.
We still need to do a lot. We need to take this opportunity again to grow ourselves to the next level. We had those laptops that were introduced at the early learning stage. That program it seems to have stalled, but there are issues that needs to be revisited again, and we see how much we should invest in them. But world over, it was clearly established that face-to-face learning for pupils is the best. This virtual learning seems to have failed even in developed countries, and you can actually see all of them who are pushing for the reopening of schools, because face-to-face, you cannot replace face-to-face teaching method. So I know we have, there is work to be done in terms of improving the IT levels in our schools, but also that we have, it's also been proven that this face-to-face learning is crucial. But again, very important is that we should not have, we had, I think the ratio was what? We needed 35 pupils per class. That was the standard.
Yes.
Now NAT must be looked, we must look at it differently. Right. One of the things that I found very useful in my constituency are schools that we provided with halls. Dining halls have become very handy this time round, because you can be able to have large classrooms there. Even community social halls that are near the schools have become very useful. And I think this is where the county government can come in. Instead of buying tents all over for the welfare, and even this GAF for women, instead of buying those tents and providing the other social things, why wouldn't they partner with the school and put up a social hall within a school compound? It will help the community, but it will also become very handy for this kind of social distance. I have found them to be the most useful. I can tell you that I have like 7 new schools that I'm doing in my constituency, but they were looking good before COVID. Now it's like a drop in what we need to do because of the new demand things. So investment in the education sector must continue being increased by the government for us to cope up with our new way of life. You remember we are saying that virus haiendi popote, kuosha mkono lazima, hii mambo ya salamu sasa ni kando kidogo. No, sio hatufurahii, lakini it is I mean, look at even I'm sure the health ministry, the budget on managing other diseases has gone down, because of the way we have been spreading diseases. So this is a new way of life we need to learn and take home, that we should always help us be a better society.
Okay.
Nasema asante.
Asante. John Oriti, if you can hear me. Your sector is very vital and very crucial. So could you be having an idea of some of the special programs that have been incorporated for the ECD students, have been incorporated for students with special needs, teachers with special needs, and the likes?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this was very good, and I'm very happy that we had even Mr. Honorable Kioni. I believe he was once a teacher from all the contribution that is making here. It's very great. Thank you. On the ECD is the one that is challenged more by the situation we are in. Because as I said earlier, these are still the youngest, and everything must be done for them. Even dressing, even washing the hands, sometimes the teacher must do personally for these kids. So this is an area where earlier on we were even suggesting, when it was proposed that schools to reopen, we were suggesting that ECDs should open last, so that they come in when we have already had some experience at the school level. So when the kids, the smaller kids come in, then we already know what we should do. So on these special programs, I think COVID has really taught us a lot, as we are saying, and I believe that some of these things we are talking about, the kids may not benefit much even in the innovations. Like we are talking of technology. You cannot have online. You cannot have online teaching for kids in the ECD.
Yeah.
Like Hon Kioni said that face-to-face teaching is the best, based on the research that has been done. So this is an area that a lot of research is still need to be done, so that the foundation of the kids are where they start is grounded well, so that finally when they join the mainstream, then they don't have a lot of challenges. But I'm happy that we are discussing agenda which has come up with a lot of observations that apart from all these things we are taking care of, COVID I think has taught us that we need now to prepare ourselves for any other future pandemic that may come at any given time.
Yeah.
So this is where now the technology will have to apply. And I'm happy to note here that at our Kisumu County, we were challenged and we were forced now to address ourselves squarely on digitization and automation of our county systems.
Yeah.
In preparedness, so that in case a situation like this comes in, then we can remove the face-to-face teaching and learning and concentrate on online teaching, so that time is not lost. And I think the challenge which is has given to Kenyans is
I think
the possibility where if another pandemic comes in, then schools don't close. We have an alternative so that we can have something to give the children, and we simply go and clear the time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, John Owiti. Gentlemen, lastly, the intertwining, the collaboration that we've witnessed between different sectors, and that is different ministry in handling this whole process. Yesterday they had a presser and you had different ministers from different ministries also incorporated in the entire process. What would you say about that? Is it something that is commendable, and do we want to see more of such strength, even in dealing with other issues?
Absolutely. It is commendable that the government is putting in place all the necessary apparatus to ensure that the school reopening does not have hitches. The president has also been passionate about children, so it is a good thing. It should also percolate down to the level of the teachers. I know time is up, and I think this is the time that we, the teachers, school proprietors, became patriotic and passionate about the children. They've undergone through a lot. Some of these young children, the ECD ones, they've never encountered this situation before. So some of them are traumatized. So it is time we teachers helped them to navigate through this situation, and eventually we shall emerge stronger. Corona will not be here forever. So it is time that we build our nation. Yes.
Right, Mohammed. in regards to that collaboration that we've witnessed with different ministries, do you suppose such also has been done in the vicinities where schools are? Because Honorable Jeremiah Kioni pinpoints the importance of the same, connecting, having social halls that would be helpful to the community and equally to different schools. Do you suppose in terms of school, hospitals and all that, such has been maintained? Maybe probably you can tell us what happens on the other side, or what has happened on the other side where you come from, and whether indeed this has been done to ensure that they streamline. So if we have students having difficulties, health problems, then it is easy for them to be transported to different sports in terms of health services and all that.
I think what is key is a multi-sectoral approach to this particular issue.
Yeah.
And actually yesterday from the press conference at the government level, it shows there are synergies between the different ministries under the coordination of Ministry of Interior and National Coordination. At the local level, of course, this could cascade. Remember, we have the county government, which are coordinated by the governor. There are different departments.
Yeah.
But what I understood is that at the county level, they are actually facing challenges related to disbursements. And I'll tell you, I come from Garissa County, the main referral hospital there. The issues is actually on the verge of it being closed down because of lack of finances to buy medicine and even basic stuff within the hospital. So if the financial constraints are addressed, there's opportunity for greater collaboration between the different sectors at the lower levels.
All right, Mheshimiwa.
Let me surprise you by telling you that what you have asked is all about BBI.
Yeah.
You see, we need a functioning government.
Yeah.
And a functioning government is a government that is able to respond to the needs of people and is able to deliver on time. There is a unit that was created by Jubilee government called the Presidential Delivery Unit. And the concept of the Presidential Delivery Unit, I've not worked on it within it, but I've engaged it on behalf of the Nyandarua County. And the idea is to bring all ministries into the boardroom. And you have all the leadership from the county also in the boardroom. And then you say, what are the issues you want done? You say, this is our priority, including the county government. So you are able to bring in everybody there. And then the issue of finances, like my colleague has brought out, is also addressed there and said, yes, we have X amount of resources. What do we do? Or you have required me to provide this assurance. I don't have the resources. And on the spot, resources are moved from point A to point B. So, and you can also see the synergies that we saw between the national government and the county government. I want to say that without the county government, we would have had a more harder time handling this COVID issue. The response, yes, you have an organ that is being left with the response at the ground level, at the machinani level. So it is a good thing. It's actually a demonstration of a government that is functioning, and we need to help it function. And they need to handle issues in the same way. I am certain when they sit as, all those agencies sit together, they will say, yes, we are talking of X number of desks. How many can we deliver? So even as Magoha is struggling with moving some from Olympic to the other, the whole government understands. It's not because he has failed, but because perhaps the resources available can only help us to do that. It is very important for a country to manage the affairs that we have the way we have. And I think it's important to say that the government has managed it well. It was a good demonstration of functioning government.
All right. Yes. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I am just about to take a short break. I'll be coming back with more updates. We'll be having links from different parts or different schools. Sharon Baranga on standby. Narok, why did I say Narok? Nano Lauren, yes, is equally on standby. And Fatima also at the course will be giving us updates in regards to same. But gentlemen, I have to say thank you so much for keeping us company and also for the great insights that you've given us from the word go and up until now. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Member of Parliament, Daragwa constituency. It was good having you from morning to Liaza.
my schools.
Yes, I know. So you're
But
going back home
I came because of this call.
Thank you so much.
I have to travel to Dragwana.
I am humbled. I hope things will be all good down there.
Yes.
And also Mohammed Mahat, education expert, Horn of Africa, or from the Horn of Africa. Thank you so much for your time. And Jasper Ondimu, education expert. Thank you so much for your time. Equally, John Owiti, who's joining us via Skype. Well, not very clear, but all the same, we are grateful. At least we're able to pick every single word that we were talking about, all the way from Kisumu. It was good having you. And also we had Simon, who is also one of the people that we'll be going back to later on. So him I won't release. Thank you so much once again. After this break, we're coming with more updates on the reopening of schools. So don't you go anywhere.
Thank you, Owiti.
Yes, you want to say?
Very articulate.
Very articulate.
He was
Owiti.
able to help Owiti.
Yes.
All the way from Kisumu.
All the way from
I
Kisumu.
think
It was clear.
that's
Yes,
commendable.
and we just did not get his picture, but audio was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sir,
All right.
thank you.